Thank you very much, and good afternoon. My name is Bob Willen. I'm the Managing Director for A.T. Kearney in the Middle East and Africa region. A.T. Kearney is very pleased to serve as the knowledge partner with the Beirut Institute, and congratulate Ragida and her team who have worked so hard to create another successful summit here in Abu Dhabi. A.T. Kearney is a global management consulting firm serving public and private sector organizations through our 65 offices around the world. Here in the Middle East, we are deeply involved in some of the major national transformations underway across the region, helping build institutions at every level. Earlier this year, we launched our own National Transformations Institute to explore, among other things, the unique dynamics of this fast-changing region. While much of the summit's dialogue has focused rightly on regional security and stability, I'm here today to speak to you about the importance of infrastructure, physical, digital, and institutional, some of which was just discussed. We're now living in the fourth industrial revolution, where the combination of super connectivity and advanced production technologies will transform so much of what we know about business today. In order to capture the promise and the opportunities of this fourth industrial revolution, countries will require strong and capable infrastructure of all kinds. But just like the other challenges that face this region, developing the right economic infrastructure is neither easy nor straightforward. It requires investment and financing at many levels, international collaboration and partnerships, and a myriad of changes to educational systems, laws and regulations, and most other elements of civil society. As you know, the fourth industrial revolution has rapidly accelerated over the last several years with continued developments in digital platforms, robotics, advanced manufacturing. Despite the statement a few weeks ago by Elon Musk, and I quote, "Humans are underrated." The OECD predicts that as many as 66 million jobs across 32 countries are at risk of being made irrelevant due to these trends. We know the pace of disruption created by the fourth industrial revolution will only continue to accelerate in the coming decade, and we also know that most countries are not prepared. Over the past 2 years, A.T. Kearney has worked with the World Economic Forum on topics related to 4IR and the future of production. Last year, we jointly developed a framework to assess the readiness of countries to take advantage of opportunities afforded by 4IR. We addressed over 100 countries around the world. Perhaps not surprisingly, we found that only a handful of countries are positioned to capitalize, mostly those with well-established manufacturing sectors like China, the United States, Germany, Singapore, and Japan. Unfortunately, the majority of countries are at risk. 90% of countries in Latin America, Middle East, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Eurasia have a limited production base today and are poorly equipped to deal with the new economic reality. In the Middle East, only the UAE and Qatar showed the near-term potential to expand, both in scale and complexity, into advanced manufacturing. This is primarily driven by national commitments to diversify beyond oil, but also by policy and institutional frameworks, efficient regulations, and the rule of law. Despite the progress made in the last few years, Saudi Arabia, by contrast, remains heavily concentrated in energy and still lacks efficient links connecting to the international trade ecosystem. That said, many dimensions of Vision 2030 are already working to address these key enablers that support global participation in the fourth industrial revolution. And we, like was just stated with the panel, we are very encouraged by what we see happening. But unlike Saudi Arabia's proactive approach, many lagging nations will require even greater investments in technology, human capital, policy and regulation, and trade connectivity to capitalize on these opportunities. The impact of 4IR technologies is not limited to one dimension. Infrastructure for logistics, transportation, energy, water will all be revolutionized. We already see changes in energy infrastructure requirements, for example, as distributed energy delivery systems, the management of renewables are built on artificial intelligence platforms. At the same time, countries also need to make significant investments into digital infrastructure. These upgrades ensure our economies are advanced enough to operate new and emerging technologies. For example, the shift from fixed to mobile networks to run an economy connected by the Internet of Things will require massive investment in 5G infrastructure, such as towers and fiber optics. This raises the question of how to fund such large-scale infrastructure programs. The OECD, again, estimates that up to $6.2 trillion in infrastructure investment will be needed annually up to 2030. Yet tight public finances have created significant funding challenges for many countries. The World Economic Forum expects there to be a $1 trillion shortfall annually, and in many cases, these challenges are beyond the capacity of national governments acting on their own. While the domestic private sector may be able to fill some of the gaps through increasingly innovative public-private partnerships, major investment from international players is likely to be the solution for many. Since the 2013 launch of the One Belt, One Road Silk Route initiative, China has played an increasingly outsized role in bridging this financing gap in many emerging economy infrastructure programs. The Middle East is no exception. In 2016, China became the largest investor in the Arab region, with over $29.5 billion in investments representing 30% of all FDI into the region. However, engagement with China also presents challenges in terms of financing these infrastructure programs. Project delays caused by the slow distribution of funds, ballooning deficits that countries such as Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and others are already experiencing, and coming out of all this, concerns about sovereignty as countries sign over strategic assets to China to clear their debts. For example, the China-Pakistan corridor, which plans to link China's landlocked western region in the Gwadar Valley and port to the Gwadar Valley and port in Pakistan, with this initiative has strong potential to impact Pakistan's economy. Agreements such as 10-year tax concessions, 90-year leases for Chinese companies could easily have a negative impact on the competitiveness of existing domestic industries. Job creation impact from Belt and Road infrastructure is often below expectations as Chinese contractors take over construction projects with imported Chinese labor. Engagement with major international financing programs raises high-stakes policy and regulatory questions, which can have long-lasting impact on national competitiveness and the success of domestic industries. Within this complex environment, government institutions are under pressure as never before, yet their role has never been more critical. Institutional infrastructure is the third piece of the equation. Effective institutions allow governments to engage in dialogue domestically between industry, academia, and the public sector, but also internationally when engaging with foreign partners or governments. It enables governments to set up effective regulations, the rule of law, and the requisite governing bodies, and also to carry more weight in international negotiations. In our work in the Middle East, we've seen firsthand that the potential from major physical and digital infrastructure programs cannot be fully achieved without the right institutional infrastructure in place. We know from our work on the future of production that high levels of participation in international trade are a key mechanism for knowledge and technology transfer, as well as generating economies of scale. Saudi Arabia, despite significant investment in ports, has faced difficulties growing exports due to the inefficient customs and inadequate support for exporters beyond oil. It is only in the last few years that Saudi Arabia has started taking steps to address these very points, where recent work helped to launch significant reforms to increase the efficiency of export processes. Just a few months ago, the announcement of a new Saudi Export-Import Bank shows that the country is ready to bridge these financing gaps in the critical export ecosystem. These investments in institutional infrastructure have already started to improve the kingdom's competitiveness and ultimately position it to better capitalize on the opportunities of the fourth industrial revolution. So in conclusion, while much of this very vibrant discussion in the last 2 days highlights the important security considerations across the region, we use this platform this afternoon to also emphasize the critical need to continue economic and infrastructure developments that allow the region to participate more fully in the rapidly advancing global economy. In today's dynamic environment, physical, digital infrastructure alone will not be enough. Countries must develop the physical infrastructure to energize global trade, digital infrastructure to innovate, and strong institutions to build international partnerships in order to become leaders in the future. Lastly, I would put in a plug as well for the town hall. I think I look forward to very good discussion shortly after the next session. Thank you very much.